Morbid Facts, Part 651. Dr. Fauci's NIH division, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, funded a series of horrific experiments on beagle puppies between 2016 and 2020. One of the most graphic studies involved dogs placed in mesh cages while sandflies were allowed to bite and feed on their heads, allegedly to study how certain parasites are transmitted in hopes of improving treatments for parasitic infections affecting humans. Some dogs were reportedly devocalized to prevent barking and were euthanized at the end of the studies. While Fauci wasn't personally conducting the tests, his agency approved the funding of about $375,000 for the research. Critics, including lawmakers and animal rights groups, condemned the studies as unnecessarily cruel and accused the NIH of lacking transparency and ethical oversight in approving such horrific procedures. The incident sparked widespread outrage online, with many calling for Dr. Fauci to be held responsible for the funding decisions made under his leadership. Morbid Facts, Part 652. Known online as Pioneers Productions, Randy Stair became obsessed with the cartoon Danny Phantom and was convinced that he'd be reincarnated as a character on the show named Ember. While working a night shift at a grocery store in Pennsylvania, he blocked all the exits, pulled out 2 shotguns, and murdered 3 coworkers before turning the gun on himself in the frozen foods aisle. Police later uncovered a trove of videos and writings outlining his delusions and plans, in which he explained his belief that these murders would allow him to cross over into the animated world of Danny Phantom. During a morning broadcast in 1974, Florida news reporter Christine Chubbuck calmly announced, "In keeping with Channel 40's policy of bringing you the latest in blood and guts, you're going to see another first, attempted suicide." She then proceeded to take her own life on live TV. Many viewers, and even people in the control room, assumed it was a scripted segment or a special effects stunt. Christine had reportedly long struggled with depression, loneliness, and frustration over the channel's focus on violent topics and sensationalism. Her death completely shocked the nation and remains one of the most disturbing moments in broadcast history. Morbid Facts, Part 653. Christina Formella, a 30-year-old special ed teacher and soccer coach at a high school in Illinois, is facing 55 felony charges tied to alleged misconduct with a student that reportedly began when he was just 14 years old. Authorities claim the inappropriate relationship lasted nearly 2 years and involved over 50 encounters, many occurring on school grounds during class hours and some at the teacher's own home while her husband was away. The case began after the student's mother found concerning messages on the boy's phone, prompting Formella's arrest in March of 2025. Investigators later uncovered writings where Formella accused the student of cheating on her and even mentioned plans to take her husband's money and disappear. But despite these allegations, her husband has continued to stand by her, even accompanying her to court appearances while holding her hand. Formella has pleaded not guilty to her charges and is out on bond under strict conditions. If convicted, she faces up to 60 years in prison. Morbid Facts, Part 654. In the months leading up to his death, actor and comedian Chris Farley was visibly deteriorating, sweating profusely, coughing up blood, and often unable to walk without assistance. His appearances on SNL and late-night shows became increasingly erratic as producers began to fear he might die right on set. On December 18, 1997, he was found face down in his Chicago apartment wearing only a shirt after several days of binging on alcohol and hard drugs. The last person to see him alive was a sex worker he had hired named Heidi Hauser. As she was leaving, Farley reportedly followed her down the hall while begging her, "Don't leave me, please don't leave me," which were likely his final words. The cause of death was a speedball overdose, a lethal mix of cocaine and morphine. Eerily, Farley idolized John Belushi and always said he wanted to be just like him, even saying in sketches, "I'll probably go out like Belushi." Both comedians died of speedball overdoses at the young age of 33. Morbid Facts, Part 655. In 2020, Tim Bleefnick appeared on Family Feud and joked that the biggest mistake he made at his wedding was saying "I do."
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do. Not my mistake. Not my mistake. I love my wife.
But 3 years later, in February of 2023, his estranged wife Rebecca Bleefnick was found shot 14 times in their home while their 3 young boys were upstairs. The couple had apparently been going through a bitter divorce and Tim went to the extreme to deal with it. He was arrested, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When 36-year-old Heather McManamy was diagnosed with terminal cancer, She began writing dozens of greeting cards for her young daughter to open in the years after she was gone, covering birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and even her wedding day. Each card was filled with love, jokes, and advice, allowing her daughter to still receive words of comfort and celebration long after Heather's death in 2015. It was her way of staying present for every milestone she knew she wouldn't live to see. Morbid Facts, Part 655. Before he was a convicted felon, NFL star quarterback Michael Vick was secretly running a brutal dogfighting ring on his own property in Virginia. For years, he and his associates bred pit bulls for violent high-stakes fights, and when the dogs underperformed, they were tortured and killed in some of the most sadistic ways imaginable. Vick admitted to personally helping drown, beat, hang, shoot, and even electrocute dogs to death. One of the most disturbing methods involved clipping jumper cables to a dog's body and lowering it into a shallow pool of water until the animal died in agony. When the operation was finally exposed, Vick served 23 months in prison, losing his career, endorsements, and nearly $100 million. Over 70 dogs were rescued from the compound, many scarred for life and too damaged to recover, though some were rehabilitated and adopted into loving homes. Despite Vick's eventual return to the NFL and carefully staged public apologies, the cruelty he oversaw left a permanent stain on his legacy. Morbid Facts, Part 657. In August of 2004, 21-year-old Josh Hutcherson and his longtime friend, 23-year-old Frankie Brome, spent the night drinking at a bar in Georgia. On the drive home, Brome leaned his head outside the passenger side window, apparently to get some fresh air. At the same time, Hutcherson, heavily intoxicated with a blood alcohol level around .22, veered off the road and struck a support wire for a telephone pole, decapitating Brome instantly. Apparently unaware of what had happened, Hutcherson drove more than 10 miles home, parked the truck with Brome's headless body still inside, and went to bed. The next morning, a neighbor discovered the body still inside the vehicle, and Brome's head was later recovered from the crash site. Hutcherson was charged with vehicular homicide and pleaded guilty in 2005, receiving a 5-year sentence. In a surprising twist, Brome's family, who had known Hutcherson for years, publicly asked the court for some leniency, stating they didn't want Hutcherson imprisoned.